Caligula's film revitalizes the genre of the observational documentary and transforms several simple technical tricks into a vision of the world he presents. Allah, doing his own handheld cinematography, presents his subjects in dreamlike slow motion that turns video into a fluid transfiguration of painted portraiture. He videotapes and interviews people in Harlem, many battling substance misuse, many homeless. He engages the movie's participants in tough and insightful conversations about the police, violence, addiction, and the inescapable impact of racism. He also desynchronizes the soundtrack, matching interviews and discussions only approximately to the images. The first noise we hear in Allah's documentary is the sound of workers in a field as the title credit emerges over a seemingly handheld shot taken in a car within a tunnel. Taxis and other vehicles make up the claustrophobic frame as the sound of working men is hastily replaced by the voice of a woman, speaking off-screen about the struggle of everyday survival. Sometimes we're able to get a good sense of who is speaking due to the editing technique of altering from one voiceover to another, a female voice to a male voice, for instance. At the same time, Allah cuts to a male figure, usually captured in shallow focus with the details and wrinkles of his face clearly visible, while the lights and space of the cityscape is obscured in the background. This method of cutting out the diegetic sound of the individuals in frame from the images themselves and replacing it with non-diegetic voiceover creates a sense of disorientation. It seems as if, beyond transporting us into a foreign environment by dropping us into locations and lifestyles we've most likely never personally witnessed, Allah also intends to further transport us through the unsettling nature of his fragmented style of image and sound editing. All of the dialogue that we hear sounds completely improvised, which not only adds to the already evident realism, but almost launches the atmosphere of the film into a surreal sort of hyper-realism. As the stream of stories and visuals flow by us, a variety of non-diegetic sounds are inserted, such as audio of field workers, vehicles in transit, muted hip-hop music, and conversations taken as if Allah simply sat down at a coffee shop with a microphone and recorded his surroundings. In other words, there are multiple layers or worlds of sound within each singular sequence, providing an intentional overload of auditory details, forcing viewers to choose which details, whether they be oral, visual, or audiovisual, to concentrate their mind on and shape their experience with. Some of the discussions that take place within the film are inherently political, dealing with situations such as poverty, homelessness, drug abuse, and addiction, or a sense of pride for one's community. It's not an ultra-political film, however, the political topics touched upon are merely spoken of, or briefly put forward into consideration rather than examined or scrutinized with detail by the characters. The film hardly even contains characters because no person Allah photographs remains the focal point for more than a minute or two. The film undeniably intends to put ideas into the audience's head, presenting inquiries and cultural comments rather than answering questions or spoon-feeding its viewer. It's a film meant to prompt introspection in the mind of the viewer and allow us to interact with the environment that the film creates in whatever way we feel comfortable. But that's not to say it isn't abrasive and confrontational as well. From this style of filmmaking, the form affects the film in that we are forced to think about the subject matter because of the stylistic choices Allah made. As the film progresses, the chaos and lack of cohesion within the editing structure gradually lessens. A pattern can be discerned, and eventually the viewer comes to understand that Allah is undoubtedly celebrating the street culture of New York and the people that inhabit it, rather than criticizing it, but doing so without holding back from exposing the harsh truths of such a world and the difficult, corrupt system that the lower class are enveloped in. But more importantly, the consequences of that system presented visually from the perspective of photographing those spending their times on the streets of Harlem, as well as orally in the form of disjointed, socially aware monologues and conversations. Ultimately, this film is an audio-visual experiment that winds its way through the hidden corners of an enormous community with an enormous history that is essentially living in the shadows, and succeeds in investigating the atmosphere, aesthetic, and culture of the damaged but proud lives and space it explores, both the gritty industrial nature of the mise-en-scène as well as the humanness of its inhabitants, in a fluid and concise 60 minutes.
You sit down, you watch field niggas, no matter what race you are, no matter what you are, this is who this is for, really. people that would sit down for 60 minutes and basically come with me to the hood, just to do what I do.